Are y'all ready to head off the trails? I'm the cryptid huntress, Jessica Jones, and I'm ready to take you on a mysterious journey right now. We welcome you to Off the Trails right here on Spaced Out Radio's YouTube channel. If you hadn't hit subscribe yet, please do. We'd love to have you. Shout out to Bumblefoot for that great intro music. We so appreciate that. You guys follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. You can find me at thecryptidhuntress.com and subscribe to my YouTube channel, y'all, at The Cryptid Huntress, okay? And please check out my Etsy shop. It's called War Woman Goods, okay? And you can do a little shopping on my website as well, okay? I have a fantastic guest here tonight. I have Jason McLean here in the studio, and I'm about to get to Jason, but don't forget that right after the show, After Hours has a great program set up for you guys. And so let's get to our guest, okay? Witness to a living pterosaur, author, illustrator, and biblical paranormal researcher, Jason McLean has authored and illustrated numerous books, including How UFOs and Bigfoot Prove the Bible is True and Metroplex Monsters. He can be found weekly on the SIRUpapers and Texas Front Porch channels on YouTube, where he discusses cryptozoology, ufology, forbidden archaeology, and the paranormal. And I have my friend, Mr. Jason McLean, here with me tonight. So let's welcome Mr. Jason McLean to Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, Jessica.
Jason. What's up, Jason? Thank you so much for being here tonight.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, it's my pleasure. So actually, I have to add another channel now. I will now be on Tuesdays with Dr. Dean Bertram. We have a new show called The Weird Library, and it's on Untold Radio AM, which is on YouTube. It's Doug Hydrick's new show or new channel, and we're one of the first 7 shows being launched. So lots of real busy over here. I think I'm on basically like 4 nights a week now.
Oh yeah, you are busy.
Yeah, I got Texas Front Porch on Monday. Then again, Texas Front Porch is the channel, and I have the show that I co-host with him on Monday. Then I host the Wednesday and Thursday show. So now that I have Tuesday, I need to find time to sleep.
You do. Well, you know what? I've done a couple of shows with you, okay? And you and I are both part of Texas Front Porch, and we both have shows there. And we have done some very interesting shows together. And we're actually going to be talking about some of that content that we've talked about on other shows here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Excellent. And before we start, I got to thank Big Dog 5758 for that super chat. That was very sweet of you. We really appreciate you here at Spaced Out Radio. So thank you so much. So Jason, I want to talk to you tonight about several different things. I know the main topic is going to be the Nephilim and the giants in America and all over the world, because you're a biblical scholar, and I love that about you and getting to talk to you about the paranormal in relation to stories in the Bible. Okay. And even the end times and things like that in relation to a lot of these things that I've been remote viewing and looking into, like the giant of Kandahar, okay, and even Judaculla, the Appalachian giant. You know, I've really been interested in giants lately. But first, before we get to the giants, I would like to talk to you about your pterosaur sighting, because you are one of the only people that I know personally who's actually seen a modern day dinosaur. Tell me a little bit about that.
So one quick thing, and I have to say this because if I don't, somebody out there is going to be like, well, actually. So pterosaurs aren't actually dinosaurs. They are reptiles. They were flying reptiles. We associate them with dinosaurs because that's what popular media tells us that they are. And again, they were alive at the same time. They're fossilized, you know, with those dinosaurs. I just have a different interpretation of that situation. But yes, so I was 12. I was fishing a creek with a friend. He had already, it's like 9-10 a.m. We were, you know, it was getting about 11 o'clock. And so he had already headed up. Just to get a better picture, it's the 10-mile creek, which is part of a limestone creek where it's deep. It's like 15, you know, some places 30 feet deep. As far as it's like sheer walls on either side, right? We could get into it because there are several places where the walls collapse and it kind of makes like a bank, and so you can be in there. And so he'd already kind of gone up the hill. He'd gone past the tree line and up the hill to head out. I'd packed up. I had made it to the tree line when I heard something that I didn't recognize it. Right? I've equated to like an ugly crow, like the caw. Like, it's like an ugly crow. It's like but it was loud. And it felt like it was coming towards me, and I'm like, "What the heck was that?" So I poked my head out from the tree line, and at first, I think what I'm seeing is the largest blue heron I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow.
Because again, this is about 10 a.m. So 10, 11 a.m. So the light's coming down. So this is, and again, it's basically sheer limestone cliff. So it's very, it's bright. I can see. But you have to realize it's like 15, 20 feet across. So I can see how big this thing is. Like I said, the wingspan is like 8 to 10 feet across. So not so big that it's comically large or like a, Quetzalcoatlus or something, but it's definitely bigger than any of the things I was used to seeing. I grew up in that creek. I grew up in the area. I was very well acquainted with the animals. I'm like, okay, well, it's the right color of a blue heron. And I saw, when the herons fly, they do that thing where they kind of do that S curve with their neck, and they'll stick their legs out behind them. So that's what I think I'm seeing. But you have to remember, I'm elevated. I'm up on this sort of, broken up these tiny little rocks. They sort of form like a beach, and I'm up on it. So I'm elevated. It gets 5 feet in front of my face. The right wingtip is 5 feet from my face when I realize it has no feathers. And what I thought had been the legs behind it was actually a long flanged tail. Right?
Did it look like this? I have a picture. Similar?
Similar, yeah. Except so imagine that, but all of it gray.
Or like that, kind of.
Yeah, sort of like that, but just imagine it all gray like that. And its neck, again, like the way like a crane or a pelican, when they fly, they sort of take their head and put it on their shoulders. That's how. So just imagine that, but in the flying the way a crane would. And that's when I realized that's what I'm looking at. And I watch it, for another few seconds as it goes down. It just glides the entire way, and it goes, and then it just banks right and disappears forever. And the friend came back down. I was like, "Hey, you coming or what?" I'm like, "Did you just see the pterosaur that flew by?" And he goes, he laughs, and he's like, "You're crazy," and walks off. I didn't tell anybody for 20 years because I didn't believe me. But
and you saw his reaction too. Your friend's reaction was like, "Oh, you're nuts." Right?
Yeah. No, exactly. And that I just realized, like, and here, like, the worst part of this whole story is that my father would have believed me. He was a young Earth, before he died, he was a young Earth creationist. We spent, time going down to the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose. I even had heard, like in the late mid 90s, the mysterious origins of man. I started, David Hatcher Childress has the scene where he talks about these living pterosaurs being seen in South Texas. So, like, I know this is going on, and I'm like, they don't live here in the state of Texas, like, and not in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. In my head, there's no way something like that could be alive in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and have nobody see it, nobody talk about it.
Yeah.
So
I think that.
Well, but that was the mindset I had drilled into me for years. Even the first sort of booklet I wrote was called The Wyvern. It was showing that these things were alive and real through artwork and some of these, that's more my expertise. And it didn't even click in my head. Hey, dummy, you're making the argument that what you saw was real. I didn't even realize it in my head at the time. I'm like, well, here's the evidence that these things are real. It didn't even occur to me. It's like, but you're like, you saw it, but I didn't believe it until, like, I'd known Ken Gerhardt for like a couple of years before I finally came out with this. And that's when I realized, because he was saying, hey, we're seeing, he was doing this, he was filming a pilot episode with Lyle, and they were talking about living ramphoractoids in southern Oklahoma. And I'm like, okay, so that eventually turned into Metroplex Monsters, where I talk about all the weird things seen in and around, including Bigfoot and some of these other things seen around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And I just realized the thing is, everyone has that same pressure, right? We're told they don't exist anymore. We're told they died millions upon millions of years ago, so they can't be real, and you're crazy if you think they are. And if you see one, you better shut up, or you catch all the flack.
Exactly. Yeah. We know you and I have actually did a
Mhm.
nice show about the pterosaurs, and I did
Yeah.
remote view them. And
Mhm.
Laura has a question tonight. She was wondering where you think it comes from. Was it born in this reality, or did it come from a different dimension?
Yeah.
And
I
what do you think about that? Because I know we've talked about this
Mhm.
before, but
Right.
we can talk about it again tonight.
No, there's no reason not to talk about it,
Right.
many, many times in the future.
Absolutely.
I'm an Occam's razor kind of guy, right?
Hmm.
The simplest answer that requires the fewest amount of assumptions is often right. And for me, the thing is, again, we can show through artwork and legends and mythology, these creatures have been around the entire time. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of what we would call dragons, not all of them, but a lot of the dragon myths, when you they kind of come in two forms: the theological or
Hmm.
metaphysical dragons, and then you have like they're just animal dragons, like they're just animals running around doing things, right?
Right.
And when you get to those stories, you see a lot of creatures that look very, very familiar to modern day paleontologists. So the question becomes, well, why are they there? Why are we seeing them? Well, the answer is because they've always been here. They didn't die out millions of years ago. And again, I'm not going to say it was 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years, 15,000 years ago, but I would argue, yes, these things, as well as other things like the Elasmotherium, that was the unicorn, and the giant beavers, and all these other creatures, are
Hmm.
evidence that the flood of Noah and a bunch of other mythologies in all these ancient cultures, they all say the same thing. There was a catastrophic flood that destroyed the old world and created the new one.
Oh
And
yeah.
we are the ones who are living on this side of it. Those creatures did not die out 60 plus million years ago. They were wiped out and fossilized in the same catastrophic event. The same thing that uh which is why we can find them. That's why we have soft tissue. Like people say,
Hmm.
"Oh, there's no evidence for that." We have soft tissue in dinosaur bones. We have hemoglobin. That's why we know for a fact that the Tyrannosaurus Rex is related to chickens, that they're part of the same family, because we can take the
Yeah.
hemoglobin and actually run experiments on it. Well, it's like, okay, well, the obvious question is, how does hemoglobin stay viable for 60 plus million years? The answer
Yeah.
is they don't. There is no way soft tissue remains soft and pliable for, I think the first one they found was a triceratops. That's like 100 million years ago. It's like, I'm sorry, we have a problem here. We've got something that's tangible that we can run experiments on, and it says nope, not hundreds of millions, at best within it. I mean, the most insanely optimistic time frame you can put on is 15 to 20,000 years.
Wow. Yeah, when I remote viewed the pterosaurs, I was
Hmm.
seeing all sorts of weird stuff. Like
Hmm.
some of them were actually created in a lab, and
Hmm.
scientists were in charge of kind of creating them. But also, I was seeing that they had some of them had been here this whole time. They never
Hmm.
went anywhere.
Yeah,
Okay, so
exactly.
yeah, it's a very interesting subject. And you brought up the flood, and that
Hmm.
kind of segues us into talking about the Nephilim.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
and the cause of why there was a flood and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Because something I've really been interested in lately are the giants.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Hmm.
I do the Bigfoot field research,
Yeah.
and I'm out there. I'm doing a whole lot of studying of the dog men right now. Okay,
Hmm.
and these giant skeletons that have been found all over the United States
Yes.
and all
Hmm.
over the world.
Yeah.
And you and I actually did a show about the giant of Kandahar.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, I have reason to believe that there are giants living on this earth right now or in
Yeah.
the earth right now.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of stories about that. A lot of people. Again, I tend to hold anything, people. I love the work of L.A. Marzulli and a lot of the Gary Wayne, a lot of others. And some people have come forth saying that they are whistleblowers from within the military, talking about, these stories of special ops units going into these caverns within the earth and doing
Mhm.
combat with some of these things.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I hold all those stories at arm's length because it's just a little too, for me, it feels too much, too disinformation-y, if that's a,
Mhm.
if that's the word, because we know, part of this whole thing of all of these equations is that there are uh individuals both within the government and not, who are actively trying to utilize all these fields of study to hide their own agenda, right?
Right.
But the simple fact of the matter is, there are an awful lot of these stories coming from an awful lot of situations that make you go, maybe there's more to it than just simple, disinformation. Maybe this is something that's happening.
Absolutely. And when I did, so the show that we did on the Giant of Kandahar
Yes.
was actually a
Mhm.
remote viewing show.
Yeah.
And so I had remote viewed the Giant of Kandahar and the attack on the soldiers, an alleged attack. Okay, because we didn't know for sure if it happened, but there'd been a lot of reports of it, and it was
Yeah.
widely known on the internet,
Yes.
and stories that were passed down. And so I looked into it, and I did see that this really did happen. And there absolutely were soldiers that were dispatched. It turns out, after going over the data, it turns out those soldiers, the first group that was actually attacked by these giants, it was more than one. They went there on a mission to get a specimen. They were actually there to take a giant, to hunt them down. Yeah. That's something that I had not heard before. Okay, so that's why
no one
remote
said
viewing
that.
is so cool. Okay.
Yeah, you're the first one who actually had that sort of revelation, and it's
Mhm.
interesting because it changes the nature of that contact entirely,
It does.
and actually gives sort of an interest, because we, on our channel, we had on one of the Texas Front Porch episodes, we've had someone reach out to us and basically confirm. He didn't confirm the exact Kandahar incident itself, but he did say, hey, in connection to this, we had an encounter with a giant in that area. So they had actually had we were speaking to someone who had been in combat, and they had encountered this thing prior to that event. So it's entirely possible that, again, because it's independent verification of what you said. They knew they were there, and they were going to kill and retrieve a body. Well, how do they know they were there? Because we talked to somebody who told them they were there, because they had encounters with it.
Well, the locals were absolutely aware that these giants lived there. That's where they went, and the locals know to stay away from that area, because these giants are cannibals, and by cannibals I mean they eat humans. Okay, and they have human DNA. They're just gigantic, like humans. Okay. And so, but in my data for the remote viewing data, I was picking up stuff like New World Order and Elysium and all the stuff that didn't make sense to me at the time until you and I started talking about it. And you really started making sense of that information.
Oh, well, I'm glad I can be some help.
I know.
I just can't be, I can't just be pretty. But yeah, I mean, so one of the things we discussed, I don't know if we're jumping ahead, but one of my theories is that they are trying to utilize Nephilim DNA to, I think part of it is to create super soldiers. Yes. I think there's other aspects to it. I do think, I mean, without saying anything that's going to get us kicked off YouTube with certain recent developments because of a certain thing that gets put into your body by government order.
Oh, yes.
We're seeing that there's this other technology. Well, there's some interesting hints in Revelation. A lot of people have suggested that part of the whole Mark of the Beast thing is an upgrade to your DNA to make you more than human, to actually turn you into a Nephilim. There's been this long-standing theory that Nimrod himself, was the first Antichrist, and may himself be the Antichrist spirit, and that the way he did that was that he changed himself into a Nephilim somehow. That's a theory. It is what it is. Again, like anything else, I hold it with an open hand. I'm like, here's the evidence for it. It doesn't mean that I have to believe it, but I would say, okay, we have to leave it on the table as part of that confirmation. So yeah, I do think they're doing that. I also think another part of that is to recreate or to create a body for the Antichrist spirit to inhabit, a Nephilim body for it to be in that has no native spirit to conflict with, right? One of the problems with possession is that there's a native soul in the body, and they're trying to wrestle control over. But if you can create a cloned human body that has no native soul, particularly if it's a Nephilim, right?
Wow.
Then you've got essentially it's like putting on a suit that would allow the Antichrist spirit to interact with us directly. So again, I'm not saying it's what it is. I'm just saying that's a possibility that we need to entertain. And it also, again, it's just one more piece to this whole Nephilim puzzle and this giant puzzle. Why are they so interested in it? Well, because I think they can use it to do things that we need to take very, very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if they could make super soldiers of giants. Okay, and you know, and we've all seen those movies and the shows where the Vikings, for instance, have a giant with them, you know, to fight battles, and it's my belief that these giants were all over the earth. I mean, one of my last remote viewing targets that I did was the Judiculla Sukalu. I'm sorry, trying to pronounce that right. Sukalu, out of North Carolina. Okay, that who's also known as Judiculla, but he was a giant there, and so and he, when I was remote viewing that, I was getting a lot of information about how the giants ruled the world, and it just kept getting repeated over and over again that our history is not what they tell us. Okay, and the giants did rule the world. Okay, before. I don't know what before. That's why you're here tonight. Okay, Jason.
Well,
we're going to talk about it. I don't know what happened.
I'm just here to like they're just pieces of the puzzle. I'm here because I think we just got to get more pieces of that puzzle on the table. To your point about Judiculla, like the Judiculla stone has, if I recall, 7 fingers, right?
It does. The handprint.
Yes. 7 fingers. Again, Goliath had 6 fingers, right? The idea of them being polydactyloid and having double rows of teeth. This is a long-standing, almost universal tradition, right?
Yes.
And to your point, there are stories from the Romans, the Greeks, again, Central and North American tribes. The Norse, they all where there would be an actual giant. Like the giants were a real thing for them. The Spaniards, when they came to America, they encountered giants. The tribes of giants that were over 8 feet tall. They depict these things. This is a historical fact as much as there can be, because history is just the story of man. It's like at a certain point we have to say, look, if everyone's saying that they've seen these things and encountered these things, we need to maybe take it more seriously. You know, but modern culture doesn't like this idea, because it is again, not to get too conspiratorial, but the simple fact of the matter is, I think that if you control the past, you control the present. If you control the present, you control the future.
Right.
If we are nothing more than accidents of evolution, right? We just happen to be the right place, the right time. We just happen to have the right set of DNA over millions and millions of years. We have no real value. Then do whatever you want to them, right? We're cattle. That's the mentality of the people in charge. But, and by the way, we'll let you. Like, we will let you. But if the history of the world isn't the way they say, if we were created by a higher and divine being with divine purpose and divine meaning and divine importance, then you can't really do that with humans. It's like, well, hold on, then we're not going to torture these. Like, we have to have respect, and more importantly, we will recognize that we do have that respect. There's the reason the American Revolution happened was very much a pastor-led thing. They weren't saying, hey, let's do this for XYZ. They're saying we're children of God. We have rights that come from God, not from the king, not from some other man, but we as human beings have, and they need to respect those rights, or they're an invalid ruler. Yeah. Right now, as a culture, we think our rights are coming from the government. We've reverted back to the old ways, because as a culture, we don't believe that we are truly divine beings with divine purpose. And the giants, living pterosaurs, forbidden archaeology, it's all the evidence that that's wrong. That the story in the Bible is accurate. And the problem is, if the history of the Bible is accurate, then the truth claims of the Bible are accurate. That we were divinely created. We have a soul, and that's of importance. And we as individuals have power. That's the other thing. We don't think we have power, but we do.
We absolutely do. Yeah. So what you're saying is that someone is trying to control the narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we see that in every facet of, especially the cryptid world and the paranormal world, you know, and with these giant skeletons.
Oh, yeah.
that have been found all over the country, the United States at least, in the mounds.
Yes.
You know, they were all taken up by the Smithsonian and put in the basement, and it's like they never existed.
Yep.
You know, so yeah, there's
Oh,
definitely a
plenty of
cover up.
stories. Oh, well, and what's worse is the stuff that they'll leave out on display. It's like it's one thing to just hide everything.
Hmm.
You get that. What's
Yeah,
worse is when there's stuff they can't hide because people already know it exists, and they're like, we'll just lie to you about it." Like the giant artifacts, where it's spear points, axe heads,
yeah,
stone tools that are like hand axes that are the size of freaking large pizzas from Papa
yeah,
John's, and you're like, and they will tell you with the straight face, even though they clearly have use wear on them. Like this is not just
yeah,
they'll tell you that they're ceremonial. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Are you telling me that a bunch of Neolithic tribes were like, hey, let's make a 60-pound stone axe head for ceremonial reasons, and then they
right,
somehow ceremonially used it and wore it down? There are bronze spear points that are 5 times the normal size, and they'll say, nope, ceremonial. But why does it have battle damage on it? It's ceremonial. It's the worst part isn't what they're hiding, it's what they're putting in public and saying, it's just not what you think it is.
I know, and the staircases, those gigantic staircases all over the world. I mean, what is up with that? I mean, I have a few
Yeah.
pictures, you know, of these skeletons and
Hmm.
footprints, and I mean, it's hard to explain this stuff away. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and the problem now with
Yeah,
CGI, right, is that it's so
true.
most of these pictures of the skeletons, like there's a few that we know that are legit, but they tend to be older. The new ones, it's like we don't know if they're legit or not because CGI has gotten to that point. That's
Hmm.
real. Like we know
Yeah.
that one's real. And there's others like it, but then we have some of these others where like it's again, it's part of that disinformation campaign. That picture of the foot, right? That giant footprint in the rock, that's a real thing. That's in Africa. I mean, that's a real footprint. Now, people say, "Oh, it can't be a real footprint because it's in granite." Well, first of all, um, my experience in the whole forbidden archaeology world, never believe what someone's telling you on the internet with this stuff, right? Because well, like I got right here. This is not the real one, obviously. Um, this is a copy made by Joe Taylor out at the Mount Blanco Fossil Museum. You know when you see those replicas of the elongated skulls from Peru, he's the
Yes.
one who makes them. He's a friend of mine, and so he did this. This is of the London Hammer. It's currently on the Creation Evidence Museum in Glenrose. This is a hammer, and you can't really see it on the camera, but there's like these little indentations here, and there's like a point here at the
Hmm.
end. It's a jeweler's hammer. It was found in London, Texas in the 1930s. It will not rust, and here's why. Whoever manufactured this hammer knew how to bond chlorine to the iron to give it a stable ferric oxide coating so it won't rust. That technology did not exist in the 30s. And I've spoken with several metallurgists who didn't know that this is what I was talking about. And they're like, yeah, we have no idea how that would be a thing or why you would do it. The worst part is it's encased I mean it's Kalechi, but
Hmm.
it was found in a river. So again, that's a big thing here. It did not rust in there with it was in this Kalechi stone that's supposed to be 200 million years old. Now,
Wow.
any place with fossilized uh shells that are, clam shells that are again
Hmm.
200 million years old. And the thing is, if you go onto most websites, people who are trying to debunk this, everything they're telling you is a lie. So back to the point about this, about the footprint, people say, oh, it's in granite. Okay, well, I'm not going to believe that necessarily until I can actually be there myself and measure it, right?
Yeah.
So the simple fact of the matter is, it's like that is, I mean, that's not just something that formed by rain. That is clearly a footprint that was made when that stone was soft, and it's not the only one. We do have other very large footprints. We have evidence these things were real, and both historically and physically, but they don't want to talk about it because it would completely damage their narrative.
Yeah. I mean, that's the
Mhm.
same with any kind of cryptid, anything,
Yep.
pretty much anything that we've talked about, okay, over the past ever since I started my shows, okay,
Mhm.
there's an obvious government cover up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it doesn't stop. This just comes up
Mhm.
every single topic. There's a big cover up. So
Mhm.
yeah, well, with the Nephilim, okay, I've been getting
Mhm.
a lot of people who have been contacting me and sending me things saying that Bigfoot,
Yeah.
Dogman, all these cryptids are Nephilim. Now, how do you feel about that? And what does that even mean?
Right. So there's definitely there's two angles to that. Actually, there's several angles to that. So by and large, I'm not a fan. So again, let me actually take let me take a step back.
Okay.
My friends say it's like if we take another step back, we're gonna be 20 miles before we started, Jason. Okay, I'm sorry, but on our show, one of the things we're talking about is that we think that there is a distinct difference. I think a lot of what's being called Bigfoot is not Bigfoot. It's something else. It's probably paranormal. It's more than likely paranormal, and wants us to think it's Bigfoot. So I do think there's a physical Bigfoot, it's a natural creature that exists. I'm not convinced it's a Nephilim for a couple of reasons, namely, uh, five fingers, five toes in most cases, right? Um, there are their proportions are more pongid than human. Traditionally,
Mhm.
the giants are just giant humans, right? Um, and there's other elements to make me think they're more pongid. However, this is where the however comes in.
Right.
Does that mean it couldn't be that a true Nephilim is sort of the human angel quote unquote hybrid, but there were other kinds of things as well manufactured, right? It wasn't just the Nephilim, there were the monsters. Could this be could Bigfoot be a form of monster? Yeah, I mean, and that would make it a Nephilim. I don't disagree with that. I think that's it's a real possibility. It's not my default, but it's also not one that I take off the table at all. Because until we have one to actually say, okay, this is what's going on, we can't say for certain. And again, you've got there's I know a little bit about the Melba Ketchum stuff behind the scenes, so I don't want to say
Yeah.
too much. All I'm going to say is we should not discount the idea that it has human mitochondrial DNA, because if it does, then that's right there telling us no, then it is a Nephilim of some kind.
Mhm.
It's not it's not the main branch. It's one of these other things that they may have created, and Dogman can fall under that. There could be a lot of these things, and to even take that one step further, I think the word Nephilim should not be sort of boxed into just human and angel, right?
Okay.
I really think it's more about just anything that's been genetically manipulated artificially, right? Not through breeding program like we do with cattle, but I mean, you've gone and you've made alterations to its DNA to do something it's not supposed to do, right? You've created something new that did not and should never exist, right?
Yeah.
That's Nephilim. And so I think it's not just well, you have to have an angel and you have to have a human. I think it's about something that should not exist being artificially created, which means that opens up a big opportunity for what does
Yeah.
actually count as a Nephilim.
Well, I mean, now you've got my brain thinking. You got me
Mhm.
thinking. Okay. Last night I did a show on the Loveland frogmen. Okay,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and those were my data was suggesting when I remote viewed it that they
Mhm.
were created. They're
Yeah.
chimeras. Okay, and we have a lot of chimeras right now. Okay,
Mhm.
that
Oh yeah.
including the dog man. Some of these are actually chimeras.
Mhm.
Okay, according to some people and what I've looked into, especially my remote viewing data.
Yeah.
But you got to think like mermaids. What about mermaids? What about centaurs and
Yeah.
you know uh,
Mhm.
just about anything, any kind of cryptid?
Yeah. A lot of these, so
Yeah.
yeah, cryptids do fall into two different categories.
Hmm.
Things that are clearly like relic populations of animals we believe to be extinct, and then something that just should not really exist. Mermaids always freak me out. We actually talked about this the other night. Like we're because it's like it's a fish person. I don't know what to
Yeah.
do with that. It just freaks me out. That having been said, yeah, I mean, once you start realizing that the primary problem a demon has is it can't physically interact with the world around it. Evil spirits, yes, they're higher up the food chain, they can, but a demon can't. right? The spirit of a Nephilim can't, once that Nephilim's died, it can't re-interact with the world directly. It has to go through humans. But if you wanted to create a host for these spirits to exist in, and this is one of the big arguments on a lot of these the quote unquote greys, is that their bodies are manufactured. They're biological robots. This is something that a lot of people have suggested, including people who have claimed to have dissected some of them, right? Is that they're sort of like organic robots. They don't appear to be naturally naturally existing creatures. Is that they would be, again, sort of akin to what I suggested with the Antichrist. It could be that they are flesh suits for demons to inhabit, something without a native soul that they could. And so it's like, well, how do you get something born without a native spirit or native soul? Maybe something that's not actually human, something that's so genetically different that it's just something that it should not really exist. And so it's something that's, again, like your frogmen are so completely alien from a natural perspective that it would not have a native soul. So it has something it can go into. The problem is we're not going to follow a frogman, right? We won't even follow a gray, but we may follow someone who looks human.
What do you mean by follow? Like, you mean as in like look up to them and listen to what they have orders to say?
Yeah, where they're like, hey, people, you're going to do X, again, to be the ruler of the world. I don't think if some frog dude walks up and says, I'm going to rule you now, I don't think I don't think a lot of people would take it, right? But a human, in particular, you can throw a little razzle dazzle, the old razzle dazzle. That's we'd follow that. We've done it from time immemorial. The comment that it's from the Hebrew Nephil, I would highly recommend you look actually at Michael Heiser's work. He's the Semiticist who worked for Logos and done a number of things. He basically shows it is not from Nephil, because you would have to, again, I'm not a Hebrew expert. I'd let the experts do what they do.
Yeah.
The problem is the word Nephilim, we don't see the root. We only get the plural. Is that the Nephil, to fall, if you were to turn that into a verb, which would be Nephil, it would actually be like Nephilim. It would be a different word, it would be differently conjugated. So he says this is a borrowed word from the Ugaritic, and it means giant. Again, there's a reason that the Greek or the rabbis that translated into Greek used literally the word giant in the Septuagint. Is that this word actually does mean giant, does not mean fallen ones. That's actually something, or that Sitchin was a big fan of, and a lot of people have actually, even in seminaries will say, oh, it means a fallen one. That's not the word. It is not from the word Nephil, meaning to fall. It is from a different word from the Ugaritic, which just means giant.
Wow. Yeah. Now I have a question. Sure. Also, I am not a biblical scholar. Yes, I have studied the Bible. Okay.
I'm a dude in art desk.
I believe maybe around in Genesis. Okay. Yep. They're talking about a Revelation. Okay. Or maybe it's Revelation. See, this is, but they're talking about how the Nephilim play a major role in the end times. Okay. Now, right now we're seeing a whole lot, like by definition of what a Nephilim is, like what you've been saying. We're seeing giants. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've been seeing videos, and whether they're CGI or real,
right.
There's been a lot of videos and things online of people spotting real giants walking on mountainsides. And, and we've got the giant of Kandahar you would be shocked at how many people have contacted me after I did that show to tell me that they had firsthand or secondhand knowledge of people who were involved in that giant of Kandahar mission in the military. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not surprised though. Yeah, it's, again, if they're calling me or technically text, then I mean, there's probably a lot of people involved.
I was contacted quite a bit by several people about that, and I even had I took some phone calls about it. Okay, because it was that people needed to get it off their chest. Okay, and so but we're seeing kind of an uptick in sightings, even of. I mean, let's just go there. Let's say Dogman and Bigfoot and aliens. Yeah. All of this, there's it just seems like the sightings, maybe people are just paying attention more now. I'm not sure what's going on, but there's been more sightings lately of this stuff. Now, do you think that could this be the end times? I mean, I don't want to think it is, but I mean, in some aspect. Do you think that they're here for that reason right now?
So let me answer the first question, then get to the second.
Okay, that was probably a bunch of questions.
It's a lot of questions, but I mean, the basically it comes down to two questions: like, are the Nephilim involved in the end times, and are we there?
Yeah.
So there isn't anything in Revelation that says, "Hey, look, Nephilim," right? That's not really there. What a lot of people have done is they look at Jesus' prophecy. It says, that again at the end of the world, it'll as the days of Noah, right? So shall it be the coming of the Son of Man. So there's like, okay, well, what happened in the days of Noah? Well, you got the Nephilim, right? That's one of the big reasons for the flood itself, was they had so corrupted humans that you had to just start over, right? And animals. That's the other thing mentioned in the book of the book of the Giants, is this idea that the animals have been corrupted by these things as well. Going back to the idea of the idea of monsters, dogmen, Bigfoot, perhaps.
Okay.
So a lot of people have said, yeah, Jesus could just be saying, well, the people who weren't paying attention and who were living against God's will, they were just doing the normal thing. They didn't heed Moses's Noah's warning, and so they just didn't realize the flood was coming. That's one, but you could also say any number of things, right?
Right.
It's like, so he could have used it. So the fact that he's calling out Noah specifically, it leads a lot of people to say, well, you know what? You had a lot of interesting things happening during Noah's day and sort of that pre-flood world, which would indicate the existence of the Nephilim. And there's other things people use to allude to. So there's one verse that says, yep, they're right here. That's not really a thing. It's more of a general, hey, you kind of get some feelings that stuff's happening, and it's indications that maybe they've never really gone, right? And again, once you understand how the Nephilim sort of fit into the theology of the New Testament, you're like, oh, you see them all over the place. Now, that being said, are we getting closer? Do I think that's the case? I do think it is. I think absolutely we're they will play a role. And again, I literally have said it. But more importantly, yes, I think we've entered the end times. I wrote a series of books, and I put them together as one called the Tetralogy. I think we're very, very near the end. Now, but here's the thing. I don't see it as everyone's like, oh, it's the end of the world. No, it's not. Right?
Okay.
It's the end of this world system. That's all it is. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to get bad. Like, there's some scary stuff that's going to be happening. But it's ultimately the end of the world system that's destroyed, right? It's this current it's the end of all the corruption, all of the deceit, all of the oppression of this current world system that we've seen for thousands of years, of these elite ruling over us and trying and just using us as cattle. That's what it's the end of. So yeah, I'm certain that if you're one of these people who likes to do the spooky things and get paid millions upon millions of dollars to sell out their fellow man, yeah, you're probably not going to like the end of the world. You're going to call it the end of the world.
Wow.
I wouldn't see it that way, though. I see it's the start of the real world.
I agree with you, and I think that's actually a very positive outlook on all of this. And I tend to lean in that direction myself. Okay. I don't think that it's got to be such doom and gloom. Okay. I think that it's just a whole new way of living and a whole new life coming. Now, I do have something else to bring up tonight. And Darkwoods actually left a message or a comment earlier, and I wanted to come back to this. This was earlier tonight, but they said, yeah, Nimrod's body was taken by the USA in the Syrian war. Now, Jerusalem has it. An entity through CERN has claimed to be Nimrod's spirit. Okay, well, I'm not sure about all this. I have not heard this before, but I am. It brought up me thinking about CERN in all of this. Okay. And I did actually pull up some pictures of the Tower of Babel and CERN and the connection that these two have and what it means today. And I was going to ask you about that, Jason. What do you think about this?
So, okay. Yeah. Again, one of those questions is like, well, it's one question and it's like 1,000.
Okay. Well,
so
just let's break it down.
Yeah, let's break it down.
Do a simple answer version.
So okay. So the whole Nimrod spirit, Nimrod body thing. I mean, again, it's not an impossibility. I mean, it is essentially it's just a different version of what I already said, that I do think that the Antichrist spirit will possess a body that was not native, that does not have a native soul, created
Okay.
through genetics that will be a Nephilim body. Now, what does that mean? I'm open to that because I don't think we have enough information to say what does it really mean to be Nephilim. I do think just once you've changed something that's unnatural, that's Nephilim. So essentially, he's saying the exact same thing. Does CERN play a role in it? Heck if I know. The thing that I wonder though a lot, and this has shown up in a lot of the shows I've been doing recently, is I'm beginning into the idea of disinformation, ideological subversion, and the tactics people use. Like the next episode this Wednesday is going to be on the MK Ultra project, right?
Yes.
Most people look at it as, okay, they're trying to create these super soldiers that you could just, that they didn't know they were soldiers. It's like, okay, yeah, that's an element, but there's a reason that Hollywood, which is very much influenced and controlled by the CIA and by the DoD, focus on that one aspect because they want people to think that's what it was about. And the problem is MK Ultra is an umbrella term for a lot of different projects with a lot of different intentions, right? So, and it was to figure out how to control us, the public, how to honestly drive us crazy. Little just a little flavor on Wednesday's show. So I think it's also about trying to understand how to, so we miss the obvious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about CERN is everyone focuses on the technology. And I think that don't get me wrong, I think the technology is dangerous, and that they're doing things that maybe aren't as on the up and up as we like to think. However, I think we're missing sort of an obvious thing, which is the actual satanic rituals they're performing above ground.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's, like, well, they're, maybe the particles hit, and it's like, okay, I'm not saying that doesn't have an aspect of it, but can we talk about the quote unquote fake human sacrifice they performed? And of course, like, oh, it was just a joke. I'm sorry. You're telling me a bunch of physicists got together and said, it'd be a funny joke is if we fake a human sacrifice at CERN
in front of Shiva.
In front of Shiva. Yeah.
Right.
It's like, I'm like,
destruction. Okay.
First of all, tell me why I should believe that this wasn't an actual human sacrifice. Like, what's the evidence that it wasn't?
Right.
I mean, at a certain point, it's like, again, what is the obvious? You've got these occult images everywhere. Like, this is not, they do all these weird things. They had a film. I'm not kidding. They made a film where the scientists and the engineers are dancing in it, where a character named Lucifer is going through. It's like, it's this weird thing. You're like, oh, it's an art project.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, the opening day of CERN, when they first opened CERN, they had it was very paganistic, like ritual kind of opening thing that had, I think Pan was even involved, right? I mean, it was, which, by the way, there's a lot of Goatman references in your book, Metroplex Monsters, that reminded me of Pan, by the way. So, but it was a total ritual, and it was opening up, another dimension. Okay.
Well, and that's, again, another topic that we've talked about on the show is why is there such a deep connection to the more advanced the technology, the more we start seeing these weird occult behavior, right? Jack Parsons, the guy who created JPL, was deeply into the occult. We see again, not to get us kicked off of YouTube, the German scientists that came out of World War II that we reappropriated. They have a lot of occult connections. It's like, why do we keep seeing all these weird occult behaviors and rituals in such close connection to really advanced technology? And it's because, well, let's just go back to the beginning. What happens in the Book of Enoch? Those watchers, what do they exchange to have access to the human women? It's knowledge, advanced technology. That's what they were exchanging, is that knowledge. I mean, it seems like that it goes hand in hand. So you have to start suggesting, okay, maybe, or just not even suggesting, just it's kind of plainly obvious there's something going on here.
Yeah. Well, what about, I mean, I don't know why I just connected this, but what about the alien abductions with people? And, someone, I've heard that our President Eisenhower, I think, had made a deal with them to let them abduct American citizens, in
Yes.
exchange for technology, right?
Well, exactly. In fact, so
Yeah.
that's one of those things where I think it was Nick Redford who actually made a great observation on this, because I mean, his great granddaughter said this thing happened. Like, she is convinced this was a real event. And he's pointing out, like, why would these extraterrestrials who have all this advanced technology need to make a contract with us? I mean,
Right.
really, if you look at if they can get here, there's nothing, much less, we couldn't do anything to them now, much less what, 50, 60 years ago. Why make a contract? Why make a deal? Let me put this out there. What doesn't make sense for a naturally existing species from another planet. It just doesn't, with that kind of technology. It, however, does if they're not what they claim to be. John Keel, all the original UFO, ufologists, they all looked at this and said, Jacques Vallée, these things aren't what they look at. Like, whatever they're telling us they are, that's not what they are. They do, however, they connect to a demon or some kind of higher spirit that works off of contracts, because we as humans, again, this goes back to, we as humans have power. We have authority on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
As president of the United States, he could sign a contract with them that would give them access to us as a people.
Okay.
Because he is our representative. The world works off of authority. That makes perfect sense. He doesn't have to know what they really are. And the worst part is, as time goes on, it looks like they're not really even hiding themselves that much as far as what they are.
Yeah.
I was watching an Ancient Aliens show years ago now. I mean, they've all gotten into sort of the more metaphysical stuff, but like, even in the first couple of seasons, they were talking about how that the story of Adam and Eve was just a race memory of these reptilian aliens genetically manipulating us to give us knowledge and wisdom. And it's like, they're like, hold on, are you saying aliens are the serpent from the Garden of Eden? Like, that seems like a really bold statement to make, but they're making the serpent the good guy. And it's one of those things where you're like,
upside down.
Yeah, this feels a little reversed here. Again, what contracts are how the universe actually works. Authority is how the universe works. So them asking or coming into contract with us makes a lot of sense if they aren't what they're telling us they are.
That's right. It's all pulling the wool over our eyes. And that's how it feels like that's how our governments run today, too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Their contract is not with the American people. Let's just say that.
Wow, that's really scary. So it's basically like a principality or something.
Yeah.
Now this is all spiritual warfare. Okay.
Yeah.
We are if you guys don't take anything else other than this out of the show tonight, just know we're in spiritual warfare right now. Okay.
Yes.
And and the Nephilim, it has a lot to do with that.
Yes,
It's almost like coming to a big culmination right now. And yes, it could be the end times. And that's why I really wanted to have you on tonight to talk about this, because I think it's very important that people kind of get a glimpse into what's going on behind the scenes spiritually right now. Because, we deal with cryptids, and that's what my show's about. But I wanted to get to the root of, like, what are these cryptids, and the giants, and why is all this resurfacing right now, where we're seeing giants in the world, and what does that mean for humanity?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is the question. I sadly, I hate to say it this way, but it's right there in the book of Revelation. 1/3 of humanity wiped out. Massive damage to the earth. I mean, it literally says woe to those who destroy the earth, right? This is a war. To your point, ultimately everything is spiritual. And this is the worst part. Politics and spirituality and the spiritual world are one and the same. You can't, as above, so below. And the problem is, as we have ignored our spiritual power, our authority, our worth, our value, we've ignored the politics. Now, there's a difference between playing politics and what politics is supposed to be. That, the authorities, the power, that's supposed to be the tools we use to build a world in which we can all live together and prosper peacefully with our disagreements, so we can live side by side and build a peaceful and prosperous world where there is no suffering. That's what we're supposed to do.
Okay.
But we're not doing it because we've ignored the spiritual. It's all the same thing. It is far more connected than we realize.
It's all connected. It's all connected. Yeah. And it's interesting that Bigfoot started my spiritual journey for me, or it didn't start it, but it sparked it. Okay. And so, just the search for the cryptids and getting out there, it really turned me on to my spiritual path. Okay. And I think that if it's done that for me, I'm pretty sure it's done that for a lot of people. Okay. And we're seeing, because, when you're dealing with something that's not supposed to exist, it opens your mind to so much more, and your consciousness really raises to levels that the normal person doesn't reach. Okay. So well, Jason, thank you so much for talking about this with me
tonight. Pleasure.
And for being here. Now, where can people find you and find your books?
Honestly, I'm on Amazon, but if you go to SIRUpapers, SIRUpapers.com, it has links to everything, the books, the channels. But again, I'm on Mondays, Texas Front Porch. That's TEX' Front Porch. And that's the channel that has all the other shows on it as well. And then on Tuesdays, I will be on Untold Radio AM, which is launching this week.
All right. And your book is Metroplex Monsters, and people can find that on Amazon. Am I right?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, any place fine books and trashy rags are sold.
Okay. Sounds like you've said that before. Okay.
I have.
I like that. All right. Well, Jason, this has been an amazing show. This went by way too fast, as always. Okay. But hey, we'll have you back on soon. And I'll be seeing you over at Texas Front Porch probably this week. Okay. All right. Well, Jason, have a great night. And thanks again for being here. That was awesome.
Pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. All right, y'all. That was awesome. Another great show under our belt here at Spaced Out Radio. Don't forget that right after this show, you can join the After Hours crew. They're going to take you on an incredible, mysterious journey for the next 3 hours. Next time on Off the Trails, my guest is Keith McLean, a good friend of mine, and we're going to be talking about his Bigfoot and paranormal field research, and I can't wait to see y'all there. But for now, I'm the Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones, and I am headed off the trail tonight, and I will see you guys tomorrow night. Y'all have a good night.